Is it too early to start talking about or thinking about playoffs? No? Everybody thinks it's good? Okay. That's what we're going to be doing tonight on this episode of Hometown Huddle. We're going to be taking a deep dive into the Joe Idol website and looking at the current OHSAA playoff ratings for all the teams that we regularly talk about here on Hometown Huddle. Welcome in. We've got that and a lot more on tonight's episode, so stick with us. We'll get to it right now. All the way to the house, and it's going to be a St. Clairsville touchdown. First play of the game. Hello, touchdown Huskies. Wide open, touchdown Ohio Valley. Welcome into Hometown Huddle, episode double digits for the first time on this Wednesday evening, September 24th, 2025, amidst a beautifully hydrated Cadiz, Ohio. Some say, many say we needed this, and I couldn't agree more. What we really need is the precipitation to be frozen in the middle of the air. The colloquial term for that is snow, and we could use some of that, and I personally couldn't be more excited for when that time of year rolls around. All right, I'm your host, Drake Watson, former weather anchor in a previous life. So we won't get into that, but I wasn't a serious weather person. All right, before we talk about Ohio high school football playoffs, wanted to mention some OVAC news from the last week. We've got champions. We have crowned champions in the OVAC in the sport of golf. I want to point out, first of all, that all of these athletes do something that I cannot do. And I say that about every show. There is Murphy Golf Simulators is one of the sponsors for when I do football games on KISS 95.7. And I mentioned on there that we're getting way off the rails already. But occasionally we do that. A lot of caffeine on this evening's show. But I said that I might need to look into that because my golf swing is probably worse than anything anybody has ever seen before. But congratulations to Fort Fry, girls OVAC golf champions. And on the boys' side, congratulations to Caldwell winning the combined 1A and 2A class championship. In 3A, Wheeling Central, OVAC golf champions. 4A is St. Clairsville, and Wheeling Park wins the 5A championship. Speaking of, so congratulations to all of those teams. Again, doing things that are, first of all, an OVAC championship is special in anything, and the OVAC does a really nice job. I know for the basketball championships, I've done numerous of those events, and the OVAC does a nice job to really make it a big event, and I'm sure nothing was different about the golf championships just recently as well. So let's move along and talk about high school football. Let's flip the page now. And I talked about doing games on the radio, KISS 95.7, and Fox Sports and those things. Eventually, in a couple of weeks, I will have River and Shadyside. And I didn't know that was going to be the assignment until just recently. What is great about that is you and I talked at the beginning of the season about what game to go to and everything. We ended up going to a Shadyside game. I had never been to a Shadyside game, but the plus side of all of that is I've seen the Tigers in person. I've seen Jaden Johnson in person. I've seen Fleming Field in person. A lot of things that I wanted to check off the list, and we were able to do that. And then likewise on Thursday night with River. So this is the first game that I want to talk to you about of the two games that I was at this past weekend. The Cameron Dragons went to Hannibal, Ohio in Monroe County to play the Pilots of River. I'm showing you footage from my experience there. Lots of hard hits, great environment, great atmosphere at River. I didn't know initially, even though it's on our sheet over here. Initially, I did not know when I was told I was going to do River and Shadyside where it was at, but I was okay with it being at either place because, as I just said, I've been to Shadyside this season and I've been to River this season. First time being at River in like 6 years. And great atmospheres at both, so I really didn't care where the game was. But good stuff at River. But Cameron came to town with a great team, a team that I believe will once again probably make some noise in the West Virginia playoffs. We'll probably give you an update on where those sit next week. But Kaysen Angel, the quarterback for Cameron, he possesses some qualities. I wanted to make sure that I took note of this as I was watching the game. and I wanted to make sure that I mentioned it on the show. He possesses qualities that not many high school football quarterbacks possess. He's got size. He can run. He can throw. He's fast, and he's got size. So you'll find guys like that around the Valley. And this is not to take away anything from anybody else in the Valley, but the thing about Kaysen is his ability to make the smart decisions and the right decisions, I think, is what sets him apart. And I don't think it's the sole reason that Cameron won the game 46-15 on Thursday night, but I think it plays a big part in why Cameron is able to win so many games. The amount of times that sometimes you see quarterbacks where they get flushed out of the pocket and they have to roll around and they have to scramble, roll out, and you're thinking if you were watching the Lions and the Ravens and you see some of those quarterbacks, that's when you would see a guy tuck it and try to get what he can, slide down. Maybe he gets 3, maybe he gets 13, maybe he gets 30. Or maybe he throws it 30 yards deep into the stands because he knows he's just got to give up on that play and eat it and live to play another down. So many inexperienced quarterbacks, and again, I'm not saying that I would be any better at this than, frankly, anybody in the Valley, but so many of the high school quarterbacks make decisions that remind you that they are in 10th grade or 11th grade. They might be in 12th grade or 9th grade. So they'll take a sack or they will just throw it up for grabs. All of these things are negative. I don't want to say negative traits or qualities about people, especially high school athletes, but those are negative plays. Those are things that you don't want to see, right? Those are bad decisions. When you got to roll out, you're scrambling, you're outside of the pocket, it is never a good idea to throw it 30 yards downfield back into the logo, just throwing it up for grabs. Yeah, your receiver might come down and potentially make a play, but he had to come clear off of his route to be able to do that. I say all of that because those are the things that Kaysen Angel does not do. Angel's the kind of guy that makes the smart decision, and a lot of athleticism helps him do that because he can scramble in ways that not many guys can. He also is smart enough to know when to throw the football away and when to duck his head or slide down and just get what he can. So kudos to Kaysen and that Cameron Dragons team and their win on Thursday night at River. It was the first game of the season that I can remember, and honestly, for most of these games, I haven't been outside. A little spoiled down the road, but I had to leave the stadium at halftime, and they have a very strict re-entry policy. Thankfully, I was let back in with more layers because it had gotten quite chilly down there along the Ohio River. Took a trip into New Martinsville as well right before that game. I don't know that I've ever been to Wetzel County, so good stuff down there. So that's my takeaway and my thoughts on the Cameron and River game. Once again, good stuff from the Dragons. And also, I really could have accessed a lot of this information on the internet, as you can with many things these days, but I wanted some sort of prop to show you that I was at the game. Not that you don't believe me, but look at this. This isn't a program. This is just a roster, but this helped us out tremendously and will continue to help me out, especially for the River showdown with Shadyside later in the season. But every player, all the rosters, both logos, good stuff. It's all folded up because I don't want to carry it the entire time. But once again, we are wildly off track from where we need to be right now. But good stuff and a little bit of a souvenir from Hannibal. Let's move along now, and this will be the bulk of our conversation this evening. We're going to take a look at not only the Joe Idol website, but also the Fantastic 50 website and use some of Drew's resume and playoff projections and all the numbers that we like to get lost in late at night. We're going to use some of that to take a look at this playoff picture as it currently stands in Ohio on September 24th. Obviously, this is we're approaching Week 6. And so most of these teams have 5 games under their belt. So let's start in Region 11, where Steubenville plays. And we talked about early in the season, I don't know that I ever, and I hope I didn't on the show, say anything about Steubenville's chances or lack thereof to make the playoffs. But it was looking, it wasn't looking great for a while. Obviously, they famously started 0-2, or infamously started 0-2, whatever is the correct term there, with losses to Ursuline and Indian Valley, 2 really good teams. Indian Valley still undefeated. Ursuline will continue to remain 2-0. as I told you last week, their season is canceled, so no more opportunities. If Steubenville had won that game, it's irrelevant because there'd be no more opportunities for points anyway. But Steubenville got back on track is what I'm trying to get across here, with wins over Cardinal Mooney and then a big win at Lindsley last week. Impressive showing. So currently at 2-2, they sit at 13th, just outside of the top 12. And with a game against Dover coming up that we believe they have a good opportunity to win, and several games against out-of-state opponents that we're not entirely sure how to read, the takeaway is if Steubenville can get anywhere from 6+ wins, we think they can find themselves sneaking into that 12-team bracket when it's all said and done. I think the two losses I think the two losses early on and a potential third loss later down the road, we don't know yet, that may have screwed them out of obviously a first-round bye, maybe out of a home game when it's all said and done. But I think if they're still in the postseason dance, they got to be thrilled, especially after the way they were feeling back in August. John Glenn out in New Concord, they're also tied at 14th. We don't talk about them a lot, but they're at 3-2. Zanesville way down there at tied for last with Marietta, among other teams. Vincent Warren just lost to Union Local. They're tied for 21st at 1-4. I talk about the Dover game with Steubenville because Dover and New Philadelphia are both in Region 11 as well. Both of them are sitting at 20th and 19th, respectively. Dover at 20 at 1-4, and New Philly at 19 at 2-3. We don't talk about those teams a lot. I think there's a path. There's obviously more of a path for New Philly than there is for Dover currently, but that's a look at Region 11. Let's jump ahead now to Region 15, home of many Ohio Valley teams, including Indian Creek, undefeated Indian Valley, Beaver Local, East Liverpool, Cambridge. So let's take a look. Indian Creek sitting right now ahead of Indian Valley. Indian Valley had a game canceled against Expression Prep. I think Cameron had a game scheduled with them too, may have had to cancel, and or one of those southern teams. And Martins Ferry blew out Expression Prep as well. But Indian Creek 5-0. They sit right now at number 5 in Region 15. I think I would say their season hinges on one game, but in reality, their season is kind of, I don't want to say the story has been told. Obviously, we're halfway through, but the framework is there for a postseason for the Redskins. That's no secret to anybody. But where will their final seeding be? Obviously, they are hopeful that they can get a top 4 seed and get a first-round bye. I don't know if you heard that or not, but somebody must have pumped the brakes pretty hard up the road there. But we move along. So what am I trying to say here? So if Indian Creek, I think it comes down to the St. Clairsville game. If we look at Indian Creek's schedule, they've got Bel Air, they go to Harrison Central, they got Beaver Local, and then the season finale is at Edison. I think Indian Creek has the advantage in all of those games. Week 9, though, St. Clairsville comes to town, and that's the game that I think could make or break the hopes of Indian Creek to get a first-round bye in Region 15. I think if they lose that game, which is probably likely, not super likely, but just according to the experts, somewhat likely that they lose that game and they finish 9-1, you're sitting somewhere between 8 and 5. And that's still good. You still get a first-round home game, but if they really want that week of rest that is much needed after playing 10 straight high school football games, they're going to have to play as well as they can to defeat St. Clairsville in Week 9 and vault themselves into that top 4 in a first-round bye. Obviously, we said Indian Valley is 4-0. They sit right behind Indian Creek at number 6. I don't believe there is a loss on Indian Valley's schedule, and so they should find themselves in that top 4 as well when it's all said and done. How about Philo at 4-1, sitting at number 9 right now? Maysville just kind of on the edge at 11. Beaver Local, we talked earlier in the season how they don't have the most favorable schedule throughout the rest of the way. We talked about that when they were playing St. Clairsville, and I had to do that game. So if Beaver Local, who sits at 3-2 right now, can pick up any combination of wins against Union Local, Youngstown East, Indian Creek, Cambridge, Lakeview, there are games in that stretch where they're expected to win, and there are games they're expected to lose. I think they're going to have to win a couple of the games that they are not expected to win for them to remain, or really for them to jump into the top 12 and then remain there through Week 10. East Liverpool, they got off to a start that they didn't, that I don't think anybody saw coming, and that they certainly didn't expect. 1-4 right now. They're on a 4-game skid after their Week 1 win at Carrollton. They have Cambridge. We'll talk about that later on when we talk about the Buckeye 8 more in depth. They host Cambridge. They host Brook. So you think maybe those are 2 wins. I'm not going to predict or assume anything, but those could be 2 wins for the Potters. Edison's going to be tough. Weirton could be a win. I think Oak Glen has played much better than they have done in recent years. So that game, in my eyes, is a little bit of a toss-up. So East Liverpool, again, a lot of the conversation around a lot of these teams is, can you go 6-4 or somewhere around there? Can you go anywhere from 6-4 to 7-3? If so, okay, where are we going in Week 11? If you can do better than that, then great. Make sure we've got the town all set up for our first round playoff game at home. And if you can go somewhere between 9-1 and 10-0, there's nothing in between there. But if you can accomplish one of those 2 things, then you are looking for a first round bye. And obviously those things can shift with your strength of schedule and everything else. But that's the gist of what we're looking at with a lot of these teams in these regions. Cambridge at 0-5, they are tied for last in Region 15, down there at 23rd. And I'll tell you what, we'll talk about this a little later. You look at the last 2 games for Cambridge against Brook and against Bel Air. They went from getting blown out 3 weeks in a row to open the season to a 10-point loss against Brook and a 3-point loss, just a 3-point loss to Bel Air. Again, I keep saying, and I meant to talk about this more so when we get to Cambridge, when we talk about the Buckeye 8. We've got something a little bit different for our Buckeye 8 segment this week. But the things that they can control and catching teams on a bad day, like there's reason to be optimistic for Cambridge, especially in the game against East Liverpool, because that might be their most favorable matchup the rest of the way. But they keep getting closer to pulling one of these upsets that we keep talking, and we might continue to talk about that until 2026, but it would be great if we could see that happen here in 2025. Moving along to the region that probably has the most of the teams that we talk about in it, Region 17. This is home to Claymont, St. Clairsville, Edison, Bel Air, Buckeye Local, St. Clairsville, Harrison Central. I already said St. Clairsville, I believe, but just so many teams that we constantly talk about on this show because they're all really, I mean, I could get to a lot of those places that I just said all in under 40 minutes. So Region 17 is very much home to a lot of our Ohio Valley teams. How about Claymont sitting at number 5? Now, they're 4-1, and we talked about them a little bit earlier on the show. I think it is so huge. We didn't talk about this game in depth, but they were able to beat Newcomerstown on Friday night. That is huge because now there's a path for them. What are they, 4-1? So they could go 2-3. They could have a losing record the rest of the way, and I think they find themselves sneaking into this Region 17 bracket. They've got games against Garraway that they'll probably lose. Now you're looking at 4-2. Tusky Valley with a losing record, you're looking at 5-2. Sandy Valley, maybe 6-2. Can you imagine? I mean, we could very realistically in week 9, be looking at a 6-2 Claymont team. Now, I think their seeding is going to still be very high at that point. But then they've got Ridgewood and Indian Valley to end the season, which we believe could put them at 6-4. Again, we're just kind of mapping this out as if you were to predict an election in certain states and everything, as win, loss, or toss up. But again, we talked about it on the show. If Claymont can go 6-4, which is what they are expected to do now, given their favorability in the rest of their games, I think they're sitting somewhere near the bottom of the bracket, but still in, which would be huge for the Mustangs. We talked about it. If they could get in, that would be their second all-time playoff appearance as a high school since '65, and their first since 1992. St. Clairsville, we talked about them a good bit early in the season, especially when they lost that game at Norwayne by 20 points, and we were saying, and again, I never thought that St. Clairsville would miss the playoffs, but it was always on this show a conversation of, are they a 12 through 9 seed? Are they a 5 through 8 seed? Or can they somehow, some way find themselves back in the top 4 with a first round bye? A lot of that, as they sit right now at number 7 at 4-1, a lot of that I think is going to depend on the Wheeling Park game coming up this Friday, the Bloom Carroll game, and the Indian Creek game. We talked about the stretch, and really we shouldn't overlook, as I just did, the Bel Air game. We talked about this on a couple shows back. We talked about overlooking teams and how that's kind of more a term that people like you and me use as opposed to coaches and players. But we've been talking about this stretch for a long time. They go to Wheeling Park. It starts this Friday. They go to Wheeling Park. They go to Bel Air on a Saturday afternoon. They host Bloom Carroll, and they go to Indian Creek, a hostile environment up there in Kettlewell Memorial Stadium. So it was always a 5-game season in my mind for St. Clairsville. It's just they are starting 1 game behind because they lost the game to Norwayne. So how can they do in these next 4 games will determine where they sit in the playoffs. If they can split them and go 2-2, and they're sitting at 7-3, I think it's a big question as to where they sit. Obviously, you don't get a top 4 seed in all likelihood, and I think it's a question if you're 7-3 and you're St. Clairsville of, man, are we 8 or 9? Are we 10 or are we 7? So I think the only way for them to fall all the way out of the playoffs is if they somehow lose all of those games and go 5-5. I don't think that's likely. Just the nature of a good team. At some point, talent prevails. You can have a bad game in all 4 of those games, and they still might win 2 of them. So at some point, good teams will prevail in that way, and I do believe we will see St. Clairsville in the postseason. Let's move along now to Edison, who is at 12, at 3-2. They are trying to stay alive. We'll talk about this game coming up when they host an undefeated Toronto team. But then they've got 3 games that they are expected to win. So again, you're looking at that 6-4 scenario for Edison, and is that good enough to keep them within the top 12? You know who else is going to look to stay, or rather jump into the top 12? Right behind them is Bel Air at 3-2, sitting at 13th. Bel Air's got a game against Indian Creek. They still got to play St. Clairsville. They still have to play Union Local. They've got the rivalry game with Martins Ferry. So I see 1 game that I think they'll win the rest of the way, that I'm confident that they will win, and that's Harrison Central on October 10th. Outside of that, Bel Air is going to have to pull some upsets. Again, according to the experts, according to Fantastic 50, those would be upsets if they want to put themselves in that top 12. But it's not looking great right now for Bel Air. But again, they are in control of that because let's say they win out and shock the world. They win out and they go 8-2. They're definitely in the playoffs. So if they have anything to do with it, which they do, then they'll be looking to win out, obviously, and win every game that they play. Buckeye Local is a team that is at 15th. Again, best case scenario, they play better than what they are, and they pull a bunch of upsets, and they find themselves in the top 12 at the end of the season. I don't know how likely it is. They've got a game that I'm interested in against Oak Glen this Friday. They've got Martins Ferry. They've got Union Local. They've got Toronto. I don't know that they'll win any of those 3 games. So, and again, I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying I don't think they would be expected to win. So it's really a matter of the Oak Glen game and the Harrison Central game. But even if they win those 2 and lose the 3 others, they're sitting at 4-6. That was good enough in 16-team playoff, not in the 12-team. Harrison Central, former 16 seed about 5 years ago, at 4-6 is kind of the reason that example always comes to mind. Look, playoffs are probably out of the equation. In fact, they are out of the equation for Harrison Central. They've got a game against Weirton that I think they could win, but they're staring at Indian Creek right after that, and then Bel Air, and then Edison. I think if you lose those 3 games, similar to Buckeye Local, then even if they beat Weirton and Buckeye Local, they're still sitting at 3-7 and certainly out of the playoffs. So that's a look at Region 17. I think St. Clairsville's likely in. I think, let's just go back to it. I think Claymont, if they can take care of business, I'm not super confident, but I think they are in. And Edison and Bel Air control their own destiny. Buckeye Local and Harrison Central, I don't think will find themselves in that top 12 when it's all said and done. In Region 19, no surprise, Barnesville already in the top 3, sitting at 3rd at 5-0. The reality with Barnesville, we'll be really brief on this. 1, because it's not complicated. 2, because I've kept you here for a while already. We've got more things to get to. I don't think Barnesville, I shouldn't say it that way. See, I always say I don't think or I do think, and then I say we don't predict things. There is a scenario where Barnesville doesn't lose a game the rest of the regular season. So make of that what you will. Union Local, their rival that they will play in Week 10, is sitting at 15th. But again, they have opportunities to beat Beaver Local, to beat Cambridge, to beat Buckeye Local. They won't get a ton of those second-level points, especially not from Cambridge or Buckeye Local. But they can, anytime you stack wins, and I think Union Local is a team, there's a scenario, again, as we've just learned this lesson, there's a scenario where Union Local wins out until Week 10. Even if they drop that game to Barnesville, they find themselves at 7-3 and probably with a first-round road game by fractions of a point. I don't know. We'll see. But that's a look at Region 19. We move along now to Region 23, where Toronto is looking to hold on to their ranking right now. At 6th, they are 5-0. They've got a game against Edison that I think will be big. And then the rest of the way, I don't know how many more opponents are going to test the Red Knights, right? So a very successful season thus far for Toronto, and potentially the rest of the way. That's a team that I could see with potentially a top 4 seed when it's all said and done. They're going to have to fend off a team like Fort Fry, though, who sits at 7 at 3-1. What was the other pizza place down there by Fort Fry? The name escapes me right now, but and I know at this point we are well aware of Jukebox Pizza down there in Beverly, Ohio. I wish I could remember the name of the other. Doughboys. Doughboys Pizza is down there as well. Go check it out. Good stuff. They don't pay us to say that either, so it's good, and we really like it. How about Caldwell and Martins Ferry? Both with winning records, but sitting outside of the top 14. So Martins Ferry's at 17th. Now, what really might come back to bite Martins Ferry, now I think they're going to get a win against Brownsville and Buckeye Local and Cambridge. It's going to come down to their last 2 games against Wheeling Central and Bel Air. But that Expression Prep Academy from Huntington, West Virginia, that 55-0 win doesn't count. The OHSAA doesn't count that as a win because that's a academy school. So to the OHSAA, in the eyes of the OHSAA, Martins Ferry is only 2-2 right now. Let's just play the game here. Let's say they win the next 3 games, which could happen. That puts them at 6-2. And let's say they split the other 2 games and they sit at 7-2. Is that enough? Is that enough to put them in the top 12? I think that's where things could get really interesting towards the end of the season, obviously around week 9, 10, and 11. So very interested to see what happens with Martins Ferry. Monroe Central, a very poor start, frankly not what I was expecting out of the Seminoles. And Buckeye Trail, same thing. Buckeye Trail is 0-5, sitting not even tied at last place in Region 23. They were obviously expecting more from this season. Shenandoah at 2-3, sitting in the 20s there, as well as we move along to the final region that we have here. Region 27, the small school. Region 27 is so intriguing because that is a region that allows a team like Shadyside to make the playoffs 20 straight years and potentially 21 straight years, as they sit at 15th right now. They've got a game against Shenandoah. I think that game could be very interesting. They've got a game against River, likewise. Caldwell might be a loss. I've seen Caldwell play pretty well so far this season. But Bridgeport and Monroe Central, Shadyside at 3 losses right now, they might find themselves, when it's all said and done, with maybe just 4 losses and still sneak themselves into the top 12 because they've been able to get in, I think, at 3-7 each of the last 2 years in that region, a region that'll probably have Waterford in the playoffs. Steubenville Catholic Central at 9, Conotton Valley at 10, River at 11. I think that's what makes the River and Shadyside game even more intriguing. Bridgeport's at 17 right now at 2-3. They could find themselves making some noise late in the season. So just a jumbled mess in the region that is 27 in the Ohio high school football playoff picture. So that's a look at the playoff picture, and we've got a couple more things to talk about. Before we do so, I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to tell you my former self is going to tell you the things that I tell you every week, and then we'll come back. We've got to talk about the Buckeye 8, and I've got to tell you about some games that I've got my eye on for this week, and then we'll get out of here very quickly. So without further ado, let's take a break, and I'll come right back. Hey, quick timeout. Little stoppage in the action. I wanted to ask you, are you subscribed to the channel, following the Facebook page, 5 stars on the podcast format? If not, that's all we need you to do. That's all it takes, just one press of a button, and you help us out immensely and help us deliver great content to you. Also, sponsorship packages are now available. You want your company's logo on Hometown Huddle and join us? Hit us up. Email drakewatson@harcomedia.com for more information about sponsorship packages. And with that, back to the show. Not really on the note of sponsorships, but I guess relating to Harco Media Network as a whole, I've got an announcement. The announcement is that I have an announcement that I don't think I can share just yet, but all I can tell you is stay tuned. Stay tuned, and Hometown Huddle may not be the only tenant of Harco Media Network when it's all said and done, perhaps before the end of the calendar year. But probably already said too much, so we'll keep it at that. But keep your eyes out. There could be big things coming at Harco Media Network that, frankly, are distant cousins of Hometown Huddle, but effectively unrelated, so we're very excited about that. All right. Toronto is 5-0 and Edison is 3-2, yet I still think they could be playing in one of the best games this week on Thursday night. You know what that means. So I've got to go to Harrison Central on Friday night when Weirton comes to town and do play-by-play for that game. So again, tied up on Friday night, so that leaves Thursday wide open, and that means I'm going to go to Edison to check out the Wildcats and the Red Knights. I think it could be a big game. Again, we talked about Toronto and what they are looking to do to secure a really good playoff seed, and it starts in Richmond when they play Edison. So we'll keep you updated. All the great content that I showed you from the River and Cameron game, we'll show you on the socials. Usually probably on the personal socials, which if you dig deep enough on the Harco Media Network ones, you can find mine. They're all pretty intertwined. And then Friday night, I will be checking the score. If you tune into HCTV, probably every break we get, every chance we get, we'll be checking the score of the St. Clairsville and Wheeling Park game. Again, we talked about how big this game was for St. Clairsville. Big game for Wheeling Park as well. I wonder if Brennan Wack can just go insane again. This is a guy, Brennan Wack for Wheeling Park, in their win on Friday night. He's a guy who scored 6 touchdowns, ran for 341 yards, 205 of which were in the second half against University. 41 carries, 8.3 yards per carry. I don't care if you carry, a lot of carries right there. I don't care if you carry the ball 5 times, 10 times, or 100 times. 8.3 yards per carry is always something that you're going to be looking for out of a running back. And he had the big 76-yarder to seal the win. That put him up by 2 touchdowns late. University did score late to make that thing a final score of 42-35. But Brennan Wack, I think he could be the difference in the St. Clairsville game. He certainly can make a difference, so we're certainly excited to see what happens at Wheeling Island on Friday night. And we talked about that Wheeling Park University game on last week's show. Thought it could be a good game, and it lived up to the hype. So those are the 2 games that I'm really keeping my eye on. Obviously, Harrison and Weirton. I had Harrison's game last week when the Vikings of North High School in Akron came to town. Harrison Central got back on track, and they defeated them 41-8. If you didn't watch the game, you can still watch it at HCTV on YouTube. My partner and I had a little bit of fun towards the end of that game. We said many things that I guess you would say jinxed the outcome of some things. So let's just say it was very close to being 41-0. And then as soon as we said that, as soon as the word shutout came out of our mouth, literally a last-second touchdown for the Vikings to make that one a 41-8 final. But Harrison didn't turn the ball over. Well, they really didn't turn the ball over. The stat sheet says they had 1 fumble. I am a guy who constantly defends officials because I don't think there is a job I don't think there are many jobs more difficult, but I'm going to call it like I see it, and especially when you see it a second time and in slow motion, clearly not a fumble from Colson Crothers. I'm going to go completely off the rails here for a second. And again, I preface, I have nothing but respect for officials, but what drives me nuts is, okay, you can make a bad call, that's fine. I would make 10 times as many bad calls as officials would. But when you signal something and you give an official signal, this was the one given on Friday night, and then they come together and talk about it and then change the ruling as if they've seen it again. Newsflash, there's no replay that they're looking at. So I don't know what they saw again. It's like, this football is sitting right here. Actually, it's not. It's not sitting here. It's just baffling. But again, Harrison Central cleaned up the turnovers. They did well to get their playmakers the ball. The things that we've talked about regarding the Huskies all season, they were able to do well. And we'll see if they can continue that against Weirton and try to make the most of this season while they can. All right. Try to be brief here as well. I'm going to flash the Buckeye 8 rankings on the screen right now. So I will preface there's no change. There's no change in the top 8 for us. So they're on the screen. You can look. It's Barnesville and St. Clairsville tied at number 1, then Indian Creek, then Union Local, then Martins Ferry. I did want to mention Indian Creek is 5-0. Last week, the graphic was correct, but I said 3-1 and should have corrected myself. They are 5-0. Union Local is there, Ferry at 5, Beaver Local at 6, Bel Air at 7, and East Liverpool at 8. Beaver Local has an opportunity to shake things up with a game at Union Local. Bel Air has an opportunity to shake things up with a game at Indian Creek. So we will see what these look like next week. But because they were the same as last week and there was no change, I decided for the first time ever we will reveal our bottom 4 rankings of the Buckeye 8. And again, I should have said this already, but I didn't. I'll say it now. This is the Buckeye 8 as it'll exist in 2026. So that's why Barnesville's here. That's why Brook is here. So let's take a look now at the bottom 8. I have at number 9, 2 and 3, Buckeye Local. I have Harrison Central at number 10 at 1 and 4. I have Brook right behind them at 1 and 3, and Brook beat Cambridge, so naturally in Cambridge at 0 and 5. I have Brook at 11 and Cambridge at 12. So that is a look at the bottom 4. Let's quickly go through. We think and have a feeling, at least I have a feeling, that a lot of you are aware of what happened throughout the Valley on Friday night or Thursday night or, for high school football. So our no huddle segment, due to time constraints, you remember back when ESPN would have reruns of games and they would cut out a drive and they would say due to time constraints. This is why we have time constraints, because I say stuff like that. But our no huddle segment, all the scores and schedules for all the other teams in the Valley, if you're listening on podcast, those are in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, they're in the description. So those are still, and on Facebook, they will be available as well. So we didn't want to leave you hanging if you were unaware of what went on in the world of high school football in the Ohio Valley, but we wanted to make sure we were making the best use of our time together on this Wednesday evening. So quickly, I'll go through the Buckeye 8 here. Barnesville defeat Monroe Central, no surprise again. A big blowout win for the Shamrocks, 48-7. They've got George Washington from Charleston next. St. Clairsville defeated East Liverpool 38-0. We talked about them going to Wheeling Park. Indian Creek defeated Brook 41-14. They host Bel Air in a game that, as much as this sounds like taking the easy way out, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a close game or a blowout. So make of that what you will, but there's a world where Indian Creek blows out Bel Air. There's a world where Bel Air makes this close and potentially pulls the upset. Hey, how about I said this on last week's show? I said just for the heck of it, Cambridge could beat Bel Air, but I expected Bel Air to win. So I guess good on us for Bel Air winning. We called that, and I threw in that Cambridge could win, and it ended up being a 3-point game. And so good stuff all around on Cambridge and Bel Air. Union Local defeated Vincent Warren 35-0. They've got Beaver Local. Martins Ferry was down early and then came back to pull away from Lucas on the road 34-15. They've got Brownsville, Pennsylvania next up. Upset alert. Sarcasm injected into the show on this September 24th. Beaver Local lost at Salem 46-26. They go to Union Local. Bel Air, as we said, beat Cambridge 18-15. They go to Indian Creek. East Liverpool lost 38-0 against St. Clairsville. They've got Cambridge. Buckeye Local, a close 36-6 win against Carrick from Pennsylvania. They've got Oak Glen in a game that I think could be close as well. Harrison Central, as we said, defeated North High School 41-8. They've got Weirton. I've got that game on Friday night on HCTV if you wish to tune in. Brook lost 41-14 at Indian Creek. They've got Lincoln County High School. That is in, Hamlin, West Virginia, which is somewhere between Huntington and Charleston. The Panthers of Lincoln County make the 4-hour trip up to Brook. Cambridge lost. They go to 0-5. They lost at Bel Air. They go to East Liverpool next. This was our September finale on Hometown Huddle, and it coincided with us hitting double digits for the first time. So I think it's important that we keep going no matter what happens, and we learn as we go. So we are not that we like to take a step back and reflect often, but we are proud of the fact that we've been able to bring you Hometown Huddle 10 times now, and we continue to do so many more times. And we very much look forward to next week's show on October 1st, October Fool's Day, as some call it, and that's really when the high school football season in Ohio and West Virginia really start to heat up, is October, and we may be in for a nice little October surprise. But that is all we have for this evening. That's all we have for September. For everybody at Harco Media Network, I'm Drake Watson saying have a great night, and I will speak to you next week.